Weird stuff going on with the camera. I'll talk about that in a moment, but the French pulled back a little bit, taking some fire. They didn't route because they're an unbroken C with a leader, but it's, you know, it came that close. Not making that decision to withdraw. Now, as to what's going on. So I did a fairly long video, 20 minutes or so, on this Fields of Blood book, which I wanted to do a review of, through a couple other weird things that I had kicking around that I decided to keep. I was going to say more. The camera died on me in the midst of it with this recording failure thing that it's been doing. Now, I fiddled with it. To begin with, it just wasn't updating the management system and whatnot. I fiddled with it a bit, swapped, played around with the memory card, and that seemed to make it so that it kind of worked. Then when I hooked it up to my computer, basically I had to repair the internal disk that the camera uses. Everything that I did, I think, may have switched over which memory situation I'm using, but the real gist of it all is I'm afraid my camera is actually dying here. And yes, I have the yellow one, but that's not going to be very effective to use. The primary issue being that I have like 3 batteries for this Averio. The problem with the Averio is they're getting harder and harder to find, because it's kind of what I started with, and everything, you know, which would be over a decade ago, and everything, I keep buying new ones, not new ones, but refurbished and used ones of it. And I actually bought a newer model, and it's not compatible with my old one, so my oldest one is really old. Anyway, hoping the best in terms of the camera situation. It may well have been that I did not delete all my files, that they actually like got fucked up by the camera and eaten by the camera. I'm hoping that I've switched to the regular memory card and that'll work. Anyway, on to the Spanish turn after I pour my tea and deal with some other stuff, but that I dumped all the Espinsoa stuff on my computer and started putting that together, so at least, you know, I don't lose what I had. But damn, man, life is getting ugly. Yeah, that's the JVC. That's another Averio, but it's different. It's like it uses a different size battery. I think the memory card, it can't use the same memory cards. And then I got a couple of cameras from my wife, but they're bulky. Like, I really like this kind of handheld light thing. Anyway, I am running out of battery because of all the crap I've been doing. So maybe I won't get back to Espinsoa right away. So I judged that this second division here doesn't have orders that allow them to go chasing off after the French up this hill. Even though that would be the most reasonable thing, the game doesn't really allow you that kind of flexibility, from my view, in the orders. But I think I still have the right to go up to Quintana and chase down this. And the van had orders to be in kind of a reserve position and to support things on the fallback and to move basically into this kind of position. Maybe not this orientation, but given where the French are, I formed up in line, and that provides me with some additional strength. That's going to put the French in a tougher position overall. This rallies. And I didn't check the blown cab either. Nope. The most useless cab in the game. I mean, C shouldn't be that bad, but it is tough. Tough to get it to charge again. Meanwhile, the old Del Norte has formed up a line here to be sort of a final break point before Espinsoa. So that is the end of that. I'm having a little trouble getting things in the right order here. Let me go check on stuff. And I'm going to be playing hide and seek with what's in this camera, because I don't know which file system it's writing to now. Which is kind of how the Leipzig video that I found got lost. Something happened where it switched over. I thought I probably had lost more than one video on it, honestly. Or maybe none, But I thought I had lost a few. But yeah, just turns out it was one little snippet, probably not too important. I didn't watch to see it, but I figured, I'm not going to post, I'm not going to try to refactor it into the videos. That would be almost impossible to do. And I'm not going to post it over on BGG as a loose video, but for those of you who are subscribed, it's cool. And I'm trying to think what else. I don't know. All right. Okay, this time we got a random event with delay reinforcements. Now again, it doesn't really fit well with the track, but what I'm going to say is I'm going to deny a roll for the turn. Because if there were reinforcements under normal situations, they would be pushed back to the next turn, the next set of reinforcements. This is the best I can do again because I don't know when the next set's coming in. For holding position, I don't know what happens if they end up retreating off the map. I think they're just gone. I don't know if we have any standard rule on that. That's such an unlikely circumstance in most of these games, but this map is so tiny and the fighting is, reaching towards the edges of it. They may just turn into stragglers, which would be the more reasonable solution, because they shouldn't be dead. And I'm betting that's actually what it'll be. The French still trying to, they're holding on to their orders, but they probably ought to at least have dropped to a default defense so they don't have to keep rolling. Honestly, getting out of there seems like a wise idea, but I don't feel like any real threat at surrounding and destroying me is in place yet. So, I can trade shots. If the Spaniards come in and attack me and assault me, it might not go well, but it might go very well, So, kind of in a mixed position. My chance of losing my attack orders is fairly low still. So dropping to a default defense doesn't really do much for me. I don't have to pursue the attack. However, if this recovers, I won't be able to recover stragglers, and it's far enough away that it would be able to if it gets into command, but it would be back here somewhere. So yeah, I'm not really feeling it, so I'm not gonna do the Spanish turn. Tonight's dancing night. Yesterday I didn't play much. I played like, half turn or whatever. I should have been going shopping, of course, but I got up too late. And I don't know, it's supposed to be okay weather next week, so, but I'm out of food, or at least out of parts of my necessary stuff. But I'm kind of proud of myself. I got some sewing done, which, if you've been looking at my shirts recently, is an important factor. The one I'm wearing, I put a patch in. I might need to do some more though, but it's just such a long process. It takes, takes me hours to sew one thing. But anyway, I started looking at the pieces here, and I realized it's not just my fault that they're small, or that, some glue bleeded and caused some color issues where things look kind of the same. The color choices for the Spanish have some problems with them. So what I did was I wrote down what, perhaps with misspellings, what each formation has as its color of band. So I've got a purple with the De Norte. Okay, that's fine. Green with reserve, blue with the third, red with the second. It's all going really well. Black, which is distinguishable with the first. The Vanguard appears to be another purple. It might be a little different. It's this purple versus this one. It's a little disturbing. Okay. And then we get to the Astoria. And now, here's the problem. Looks like another purple, but the units are yellow. So they got the banding screwed up on the leaders. All the leaders, the 3 leaders for the Astoria are all purple. Okay, but yeah, this is, writing this down should help. It's really been screwing with my my capability to figure out what's what. With divisional orders, and I hate this in the 3 battles at Bull Run or whatever. I don't remember what it's called. I've got it kicking around. There it is, 3 battles of Manassas, which is a CWB game. The first one especially, but the second one as well. The third one I've never played. It's a fantasy battle, a what if, where the core structures are in place. But they play, the first one, neither side has any core structure. And it is just such a mess. All these little commands that you have to try to figure out where they are. And I mean, in this game, I'm looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different commands, 7 different commands on the Spanish side. The French side's fine. There's 1 on the board right now, and there's only 3 total. But 7 different commands. This had better be a huge game, If I'm looking at 7 core in a game, I'm looking at Gettysburg or something, and core generally take up a lot of space, so it's fairly easy to move around and figure out, what they're doing and everything. But here, with these little divisional units, with maybe a couple of brigades in each one, having to have all these have different separate orders is just this painful burden in terms of the game. It creates a painful burden on the general in charge of it. They've got to be assigning orders to all kind of different little units, and they're running around commanding a greater amount of subordinates than they would normally want to be able to do. But in terms of just handling the order system, especially when they're all intertwined like this, many of them doing the same orders, it's just really painful to find the ones that I have to make attack stoppage checks on and stuff like that, and to figure out which specific orders each one's following and everything in order to, pursue what they're actually doing. It just creates this extra burden of play, of difficulty on the play, that has led that particular game to be my least favorite of the CWB series. I know some people loved it. It came out rather late, and I just looked at it and I played it a couple of times. The first one, both sides are all divisional orders, and it's just a fucking mess. And then the second one, I think the Union Army has core formations, and the Confederates don't. And again, like with this, the French are easy to do. The Spaniards, though, are just such a mess. Since I play solo, I just don't like it. It's no fun. I would feel the same way about a big battle or a relatively large battle in which, there's lots of units that are off on divisional goals all the time. It's just painful. Situation at the end of the 12:30 turn. Let me clean up some of these morale. Some of the Spaniards crossed the stream here. That shakes them, so I didn't want to get closer. I launched an attack here. With the advantage of height, I forced the French to roll first, but both units are in good morale. However, although I was repulsed, I broke the unit, and between the advances coming in to surround the force, coming down from here as well, it's beginning to look very much to me as if the French can't stay in this position. They're going to have to do an emergency withdrawal to get the hell out of there. And now I've got a disordered unit, which makes withdrawal a lot harder. I may have to give that unit up. This is going very well for the Spaniards right now. It looked so impressive, the French just busting through the town, charging forward, but then they hit the wall, and it actually stopped them enough for the Spanish to bring their forces to bear. It's such a tight little valley there. Ooh. Interesting. You can see, as with the AM PM shift, there's sort of not a real grasp of how clocks work in America or whatever. Yeah, I know it's not an American design game, but I don't think they work this way in Europe, to tell you the truth. Going from up to 12 a.m., but then starting to count at 0 when you hit what would be 12:30 p.m. Here. I'm just not sure. I'm not sure if this is a difference between a European team designing things, because I know of no such weirdness, like no such weird difference between European and I don't know. I mean, American, but it's based on British, and I thought kind of all of Europe used the same thing, that 12, because like with the military, 12 p.m.s or 12 a.m. sort of 0 hour, nothing happens at 0.00, right? Nothing can happen at that point, because it's just kind of a weird, it's no time has passed. For the same kind of thinking, you're post meridian, you're beyond the middle of the day as soon as you've hit 12, even though you're actually neither ante nor post. You're actually on, but that moment in time is impossible to capture. Of course, you know, when you start playing with things like daylight savings and shit like that, and the fact that time zones aren't exact, you know, aren't aligned, they'd have to be slivers so thin. You know, the reality is, when using a sundial, it makes sense to have the AM/PM split, but it really didn't once you start going towards other methods and mechanisms. And unless noon moves every day, would it move? I think it could remain fixed. I'm not sure though, because the way the Earth tilts changes that. If the Earth didn't tilt, it could remain fixed, but I don't think it. I don't think it can remain fixed. I think it changes, but I'm not sure in what way. So I mean, the whole thing is, it used to be the day was split into, you know, AM and PM by where you go across that line. You know, once you hit that line, you're exactly on it. Yeah, you're at the middle of the day, and then, you know, everything before that are hours, which can be shorter or longer before the day, before the meridian, and everything after it is hours after. Again, they can be different size. Of course, people were measuring nighttime hours using semi-mechanical means like candle clocks and such not. So they weren't aligning with that sort of natural sundial mechanism, at least in the medieval era. I don't know, you know, at what point that switched, but sundials don't really work. They will not align to any kind of mechanical clock. Okay, so on the French side, the unit fails its check to stand, whatever. It's not. It's core attack failure, whatever. Check to stand is in the close combats, and will withdraw. I've taken care of that. I've taken care of everything already. But Victor came in. Now Victor comes in on his own without his headquarters. His headquarters will come in the second time I roll a Victor roll. I assume he has some value without his headquarters, and this is how I read it by, you know, applying the rules as I understand them. Victor can issue one order, and one order only. Now remember, he has to make an initiative roll to be able to issue an order too. But he can issue only one order before he has to step back on his headquarters. So he can do one thing that he instills as an order. But right now, that third division is pretty much wrecked. Well, it's wrecked. It is wrecked. It's routing, and it's not in good shape. And we could see this unit dissolve entirely by going off the board. I'm not going to look that up. I vaguely remember that being the answer, and it may have been only in some scenarios that it's listed as such. But it's the only sensible. It's the only sensible answer. Is to convert it all to stragglers, so that it would have to reform. Unless a scenario says units that retreat off the map can come back X number of turns later or something. Oh, I haven't done my morale recovery. I kind of lied. I did try looking it up. Finding anything in this 3.0 rulebook is almost impossible. It doesn't have a table of contents like the old one did. I give up. I don't even know where it would be. There's got to be retreat rules. There've got to be rules about retreating somewhere. Maybe in the rally section. I mean, retreat is handled in multiple places, and that's the problem. And here I am in fucking random events and all kind of book. This really needed an index, and taking that away was a serious, serious hit. So now the way of figuring out the game is to flip through the rules. Here's something on retreating. Okay, if you can't retreat, you take losses, like I said, as stragglers. Exception. Infantry that can trace a path through prohibited trade. Yeah. So infantry can't go through enemy or prohibited terrain. They're removed and their strength is destroyed. I get the feeling, though, so there's another thing that if they can trace a path through prohibited terrain, mark off the remainder as stragglers instead. I don't see anything off map, but I feel like that's sort of the aligning thing. Here's the problem. In addition to the unit, which is going to turn into stragglers and leave Victor alone, there's a skirmisher with it. If that unit has a skirmisher, I'm going to erase the skirmisher from the unit. So if the unit reforms, it'll reform with the skirmisher. If it doesn't, the skirmisher's just lost, man. I don't know. I could retreat this way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, I could actually retreat. I could retreat into this space. Let's keep the unit on the board. Whoop, whoop. Because that would be too painful. But yeah, that would be my way of handling the skirmisher. If there's something off board that the skirmisher can attach to, I'll allow it to survive that way. Oh, so yeah, that's about it. It looks really bad for the French at this point. With my camera again, swap batteries every now and then. I have to set the date and time. It worries me, along with some of the other issues that have been happening. I don't know how long it's going to last. At some point or another, I'll switch over to that yellowish one, but that may well, like not having an Averio and the batteries and everything may well be kind of the final step on my vids. It's too hard to operate without, and unless I can get up the willpower to search for another old Averio, I don't think, and the fact that I bought one and that I thought would be, and it wasn't, as not my last camera, but my second to last camera, just before I got this one, I bought one and, oh look, it doesn't work. I don't think I could get it working, period. But the batteries don't fit in it and everything. I can open it up, but I don't have a memory card that fits in it or anything. And yeah, it's just kind of, I'm at the end of this is the one. This one here comes in a nice little case. No, that's not it. I guess it's this one. My God, I've got a lot of cameras. Anyhow, So there's a bit of weirdness in the game as well, though. The game was designed, I guess, with the thought that the Spaniards would always be on the defensive, where this wouldn't matter. And cavalry and the artillery are only in command and can only operate if they're in range of the Army Corps, the Army headquarters. Well, that's a really weird decision. What it means is I have to start operating the Army headquarters piece, which is never supposed to really operate as any important factor in the game. The only thing it does in most of these games is give a place where the Army commander can go step on to recharge his orders. And I think that's actually a new thing. I think in the original, well, I don't know in NBS, but in the old CWBs, you didn't have to do that. It really was just an unimportant marker on the board, but and the commander could wander around all over the place giving orders willy-nilly. But it was decided to use it for something to indicate that he's got to stay around his staff or something. I don't know how believable it is. Like, I get the feeling that if Wellington wanted to ride around with his staff, he wouldn't have to keep stopping back at his headquarters to give orders. He could march down the line and give orders to each unit in a line verbally if he wished. And that's just the case with most leaders. But most of them probably wouldn't have been that active. Wellington seems like he might have been willing to ride around like that rather than issue written orders all over the place. I don't know. I haven't really, maybe I'm, but certainly there would be some commanders in the course who were willing to detach themselves from their headquarters enough. Now, you could put that in as an optional, as a scenario-based rule or whatever, because I think the norm is that the leaders would stay near their headquarters. But here, it's such a weird situation, because in order to advance, I am going to have to, and have full support of all my equipment, I'm going to have to give orders to my headquarters. And then, unless the headquarters gets overrun, if the headquarters doesn't get overrun, the cav and the artillery would have to, if the rest of my force gets pushed back, the cav and the artillery would have to stick near the headquarters while the rest of the army is routing, and that could be used against it. It's opening up all kind of weird permutations, and it's really not a good choice. Much better would have been that you could give them independent orders or attach or detach them. None of that is stated in here. And because of what I was talking about in terms of the headquarters, having to be overrun to make it fall back, or get orders, which might take a long time, the cav and the artillery then become more vulnerable to overruns. So it doesn't even work in this purely defensive situation where I may have to fall back and give ground. It's a bad choice of rules, and I don't know what to do though, because it does. I think I'm going to use it. I think I'm going to say I could detach and attach the cav and the artillery, but the amount of flexibility it gives me to throw my headquarters forward and get those two units as sort of free acting units. It would be best if they were just use them however the fuck you want. They're purely independent, but they're not in this. They're linked to that headquarters. If I'm going to write orders for the headquarters, I have to remember, what's the command value of headquarters? Are they 2s or 4s? I don't remember. I got to go look that up. Because unlike, the usual things where all the counters have the number on them, this is a special case. At least I know where I'll find this one. That's not what I expected. They have a 3. Great. My initial orders, and since they were complex orders, I figure they give me the right to engage and keep going, which is why I'm here. We've got a number, oh, these haven't moved yet. Oops. Let's do this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Those guys were shaken for crossing the streams, but they get a chance to recover. This was because these guys were, these guys have dropped down to a defense, to a default defense, so they're allowed to recover stragglers, but I don't actually need to. I probably shouldn't have dropped them to default defense, but the thing is, they're immune to core attack stoppage now. So I've got a chance of holding Quintana, although we saw how effective holding a town is. But they're not great morale, so they're perfect people for being in town. Blake gave his orders to this headquarters. He's giving orders now to whatever division this is. I think that's the 1st Division, to get that up to perform some actions. The Asturias is actually the only one with orders that allow them to kind of pursue the French. And I don't want to get too close because the Asturias army is really shitty. But I can bloodlust them. So I can turn them into gods on attack, I guess. I don't know. I'm afraid to do it. I don't even remember. Wait, what is this rule? Again, this is a really kind of weird, goofy rule. You may excite them into bloodlust as long as he remains. Yeah, so, I mean, technically these all went into bloodlust. They can all go into bloodlust, but they lose it as soon as, you know, they don't end up in contact with the enemy. But yeah, so even though they're really, really shitty units, they're capable of launching an attack and then actually possibly having great staying power for how shitty they are, which is just crazy as far as I'm concerned. These guys have orders to put up a defensive line where they are. That might be better, but I feel like I want to engage more forces up towards the front. It might be better to have, you know, speed bumps on the French path. That's it for today. I think I've done everything. That gets me aligned so that I'm back on a French turn at the beginning. But yeah, I mean, the French have lost the day. That's clear. The question is, you know, whether this 3rd Division can survive. Trying to get a little bit of playing in. It's late Sunday, and I have sunk deeper and deeper into despair. Anyhow, the French continue routing. This isn't hurting me at all. Other things are. And we're moving on to the Spanish turn. Nothing exciting happened, just they fell back further. Into the Spanish turn. The hard part here is, I would love to be able to finish those suckers off, right? To take advantage of them in this condition. However, my chances are very low. First of all, Blake is over here ready to give orders to the 1st. Now, the 1st has fallen into defensive orders, which give no penalty any further. So I could actually order that forward. What are its chances, though, of success? Well, it's in reasonably good shape, but outside of that, it's hard to tell. Also, you know, there's the possibility of initiative, of course. So we look here, and I think, yeah, the Spaniards have a -1 to their command rating when looking for initiative, which means it's just not going to be too good. The only person, there's one level 3 leader who would drop down to a 2, and that would be about a 50-50 chance. You know, well, the chance of a loose cannon is as likely as the chance of something else. But I might just chance it. Let's see. Asturias has a 2. That would drop to a 1. I might just take a risk at it. to get these guys to move forward and attempt it. Why don't we do that? I'm writing some orders for these to do it as well. I have to do things kind of piecemeal in terms of, because I have to identify which units are capable of recovering stragglers and stuff like that. So I kind of do the command phase not in perfect sequence. That can cause problems, especially with so many little commands in play. But it does speed up play a little bit. I've been using these guys as my straggle recoveries because I don't actually need them in the game. No luck either way for the Spanish initiative roll. Headquarters got itself moving finally, or wasn't that long ago. And I gave orders that I don't like to give, to pursue the 3rd Division and then return to Quintana. Again, I don't know if these are legal or not under the system. I never have really known if they're just good enough, sort of, especially with this, hey, and then return to Quintana, which is basically once I think I've done enough damage, that's where I'm going to head. It probably should be written as a complex order. I put it as engage. It doesn't make a damn bit of difference. But yeah, and then I don't know what the status is. You know, once it gets back to the Quintana line, I don't know what its status is. It's going to fall into either defend or no orders. Or it can just keep its orders. But keeping its orders, nothing, or most of my units no longer have those orders to do that kind of fighting withdrawal. I like the concept of that. It's just like, yeah. It feels to me like every time I play a game in the CWB-derived games, some designer or another has come up with some new little twist to the order system that I wouldn't say is strictly legal. You know? Oh. All right. I'm trying to decide if I want to push through another turn. They're fast right now, but... Okay, weird shit happened. First of all, a random event that had no effect. Great. Then the track says Ruffin comes in. He's the commander of the 1st Division over here. Just him. He's got nothing to command. He's on his own. As far as I can tell, because there's another result for the 1-1, which brings in 2 regiments. And then a second result of that, I'll bring in the 96. Now, if Ruffin comes in again, if I get the same roll as he does, that'll bring additional forces in. But I guess his command comes in without him is potential. In this case, he came in without his command first. He's useless. So he's hanging out with Victor, seeing what he can do, which is nothing. However, that is the stack that managed to rally anyhow. And this guy recovered some stragglers. Doesn't have anything better to do now. Exciting happening with the Spaniards. I'm beginning to think that Blake's going to go back here and cancel those orders. I prefer a defensive line. I gave orders to the reserve to move up and act as a reserve, basically filling in gaps where needed again. I'm not sure how legitimate that is, but as you know, if I'm allowed to do complex orders that allow fighting withdrawal, it feels like a reserve should be allowable too. That's an order I have not seen in any of the games, and I'll probably do the same with the 1st. The Del Norte back here is recovering. They're the Spanish unit that got hammered really hard, kind of like this did. But I'm beginning to feel like, yeah, the moment's passed, man. I shouldn't have even given the order. I knew it was past, but yeah. Countermand that order now. Right, Ruffin's command. 2/3 of the division have made it on now. I'm pretty sure the Spaniards are going to, Blake is going to recall his order. And I don't think I have any other orders that I'm terrified of I think everything else sitting there is okay. So the Spanish turns take a little longer, mainly because of all the different commands that I have to track down. Hey, what are they up to? What's going on with each one? The French, well, they have no orders right now, so that's great. I think it's too late in the day to start any kind of attack by the French, especially since Victor would have to roll an initiative roll to succeed. Now that initiative roll, it's not covered by this. So his core headquarters isn't on the board yet. I've told you what I thought that would mean is that he gets to issue an order, and that's it. he can issue one order, and it has to be a verbal order until his staff shows up. That doesn't... So something that would align a lot better is Victor can't issue orders except by initiative until his headquarters shows up. Like he'd have to roll for initiative until, but that's not what they chose to do. They chose to write different rules for it that don't, align as well. So I'm not sure what it means that he doesn't have a headquarters. But I figured that the initiative rolls, he still has to step on the headquarters to deal with. So one of the minor variants, Blake quits early, is actually also triggered by the random events table. And I got that option. I've got to think about this. I get 1 victory point per division exited after midnight November 10th. No victory point cost. Well, there's a lot of divisions. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It doesn't say per unwrecked division even, and I don't have anything that's permanently wrecked. So I actually think that this is what he'd want to do. In terms of victory points on the field, there's like 5 victory points on the field. If I'm looking at being able to pull 7 divisions out for 7 additional points, I thought there were only 4. I might as well. I just have to get out here, and the French are not going to be able to prevent me. If that's the case, however, I had to just call the game here, right? The Spanish have taken very little in losses. The French have taken a little bit more, but they have nothing permanently wrecked either. This would be an inconclusive battle. The Spaniards withdraw. They gave the French a bloody nose. I think it would be a waste. Although clearly the Spanish can pocket the victory and walk away with it. And I would just call it here if that's the case. So I'm going to think about this, whether or not I want to keep playing a larger battle with these crappy components, because these components really are a problem. I just, the handmade shit and everything. The thing is, I'm getting a kind of an interesting result out of this. Like, it's not the French just, that initial hit was exciting, but then the French were stopped. And now the Spanish have rebuilt a line around Quintana, and I think they can hold it. However, their victory points in the game, let's see what the victory conditions are here. Okay. So if the French took 5 of the victory point hexes, and I think that's all but 1. I don't know. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's assuming there's one up here. Yeah, 6. Yeah. If the French could take all but 5 of all 5 of the easy to access victory points, right? This one is just, I don't even know why it's in the game, but they win if they take it on the first day. Well, they're not going to do that. That's pretty clear. But outside of that, it's losses. Now, I would get points per brigade that I can get out of Area B after 9 a.m. on the next day. I can probably do that. That's per unwrecked brigade, right? No, per every 3 brigades. And that's not too much more than the divisions. And it gives, well, I think a non-wrecked French division has exited through entry area B anytime during the game. Even if I withdraw, the French would get that. So they would be getting, what is it? They would get the field, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, plus 3 is 9. I'd only be getting 7. So I'd actually take a loss if all the victory points count. As opposed to this, which is every 3 brigades. Let's see, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So I could get 6 points. That's less than I would get by declaring the full withdrawal. So I think, given that, like, I would lose the game, and it is an interesting situation, I will continue the fight. However, not right now. Okay, as I continue, the French run into one of their problems, which is if they start getting reinforcements, those reinforcements may not hit anything that exists anymore. So, for example, I hit Ruffin again. Well, there's a nice thing. The Ruffin gets treated as a 1-1, but I've gotten the 2 1-1 results already. So basically, the meat here, Ruffin and the 1-1, are gone. Eventually, it all devolves to Ruffin, which means you'll get all of that eventually. But the 2-1 division, which is the latest arriving thing historically, will not come in. And then there's the optional guns, which I'm kind of playing with, but I don't think the point should be charged unless they actually show up or something. I don't know. The terrain in this battle, the scale of this battlefield must be a little smaller than most, because the night turns have a 2-hex visibility written on them. Normally it's 1 hex. And but we've entered night. The armies have mostly recovered. The French, the only thing they added was I rolled Victor again, so I got the Corps headquarters in play. Now I've got a couple of special rules to come up with here. Okay, Victor still can't issue orders normally until midnight. But then there's the bad weather, which is unless units are in a building, they won't get a straggler recovery. And I think there are very few in buildings. There's a couple here in Quintana, a couple here. I'll have to keep an eye on those. Those guys will have an extra +1 because of the night rolls. So, as night falls, the French get a random event, sleet. Each time this event occurs, roll 1 die. On a 1 through 5, a cold mix of rain and snow starts to fall. The sleet reduces visibility to 3 hexes, gives another -1 on straggler recovery. If a 6 is rolled, a veritable storm breaks out, causing the night rolls, but with a -1 on straggler recovery. And then this keeps going until we get a 5 or a 6. It's not going to have much effect because it is already night. But yeah, we get sleet, and in either case, these will keep going until a 5 or a 6 is rolled. It's 10 p.m. I had some spare counters in my counter sheet, but they haven't been cut yet. But I wrote sleet on one and storm on the other side of it to handle that. So far, that sleet's just been coming down. It's 10 p.m. now, just the beginning of 10 p.m. The entirety of the French army, except for the optional guns, has come in. Victor still can't write normal orders without making an initiative check. I don't want to do that. Although there's actually no harm, because the loose cannon rules for that just cancel an order. So I could actually start writing my orders using initiative. He's got his core command, so it wouldn't really hurt. And for the Spaniards, well, their units have all moved into their positions. In terms of recovery, all the Spaniards have recovered as much as they can. I mean, you know, this del Norte. Right, camera is acting up, giving me those recording cancels. Tried to force it over to the chip. I doubt it worked. I made my own little sleep counter. It's 10 p.m. So far, what's happened is and I think there's just bad sectors on the camera memory. All the French troops except the optional guns came in. I could start writing orders with Victor. There's no real penalty to it. Loose cannon just means he throws away an existing order. Well, there aren't any. So getting a start now would make sense. The Spaniards have all moved into position as well. The Spanish troops have recovered as much as they can. You can see some damage to a couple of their units. And then the de Norte has taken some pretty heavy hits. For the French, that 3rd Division took a fair amount of hits. They're not fully recovered. You can kind of see a couple of spaces where they've got a couple of stragglers on them. Wow, it seems to be taking this time. It failed twice in a row, which is problematic. But maybe I forced it over to the other desk. All right, some real light turns. First of all, the sleet gave up around 11 p.m. But I started writing orders for Victor as early as 10 without, I forgot to do the initiative rolls. So I checked the initiatives, he didn't get any. So I delayed them and moved them to 12, 1, and 2 a.m. And he got his orders all off. There used to be a concept, there's nothing else really happening. Everybody's recovered all their stragglers, etc. There used to be a concept, I think as an optional role, for foot dragging. This made a lot more sense in Civil War battles than it did in the Napoleonic battles. Although, well, it's gone from the version 3 rules. It existed in the earlier rules, if I recall correctly. I don't feel like it makes a lot of sense with something like the French army. It might make sense with most of the Allied armies, but with the French, anyway, the way it worked was if you issued orders more than like 2 hours ahead of time, they couldn't roll for acceptance until that 2 hours before. That was still sufficient for a good commander, and Victor's good enough, to get some reasonable results. And what we have right now actually kind of exemplifies that. Both the 2 and 1-1 divisions have accepted their orders already. They wouldn't have been allowed to check, though, until a couple hours before the time, using the foot dragging rules. I liked those rules. I thought they helped a lot. But again, I'm not as certain that I accept them for the best organized armies. You know, it's somewhat disturbing. It's like, you know, if Napoleon comes to you and says, be ready to move at dawn, you know, you're going to get things prepared, right? Now, this isn't Napoleon, and maybe that would be a reason, and plus Victor's under confusion. And in general, I think the rule actually makes sense, but since it's gone from the rules, I'm not using it now. Maybe it was disliked. Again, I thought, I'll tell you one thing. At Austerlitz, what I found was that the coalition was able to coordinate, not in the most recent play, but the coalition was able to coordinate a massive assault that just, you know, my opponent was shocked. And that was even with the foot dragging rules. he couldn't believe that with these crappy leaders, I was able to get, everything working kind of at once. And it wasn't everything, but it was close to everything. And if you don't have those foot dragging rules, it's almost automatic. If you start planning something overnight, it will be ready and you will launch your attack at dawn. And now, there were cases where attacks didn't happen at dawn. Now, the most obvious example is at Waterloo. There were reasons not to launch the attack early there. Anyway, I'm going to send this one up now. There's not much more happening overnight, and I want to be aware of the problems that I had with my camera when I pulled the vids off of it. So I might find that things are split between two different locations. Although that didn't happen last time I did this, and it fixed it somehow. Oh, is there a night side? No. Damn, gotta have some words with the counter designer. Okay, up it goes.